meeting with Mercedes-Benz Stadium in preparation for the games. This was our last meeting with them. So
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I realize you must be very busy. So again, I appreciate you taking the time.
Sure. Glad to help.
Well,
Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, let me tell you, I'm personally very excited about making my first trip to Mercedes-Benz. I was beginning to think it was never going to happen back in 2016 and 2019. For the when you all had the playoffs, we of course had to go out to Arizona both those years.
Interesting. We've had Clemson in the Peach Bowl, the old Peach Bowl, and the Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl more than any other school in the country.
Exactly.
I think in 54 years, I think we've had them 8 times.
Yep.
And since the advent of the CFP, we've yet to have Clemson, and they've been in the CFP playoff almost every year. So
yeah, and then
I know Dabo would like to play twice in Atlanta, once in this game and once in our semifinal game, December 31st.
Oh man, I can tell you, all of us in the media and the fans would love that. Then there was the 2017 when you all hosted the national championship game. Was the 1 year out of 5 that Clemson didn't make the national championship, of course.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. You're right.
While we're on that subject, let me ask you, Gary, how do they decide who plays where in the semifinals? Because I've heard conflicting things. I've heard that the number 1 team gets to pick. I've heard that the playoff committee gets to pick. How do they decide that?
Yeah, the bowls have no say-so. So this year, the CFP selection committee will place the first team, and they'll give preference geographically to that first team.
Okay.
Between us and Phoenix in the Fiesta Bowl. So I would imagine if it's anybody, Pac-12 out that way, they would, and they were number 1, they'd probably give the preference for that team to go to Fiesta Bowl.
Right.
I would think, and I'm just guessing here, but I would think ACC, SEC, some of the Big 12 maybe not, some of the Big 10. If they were number 1, they'd probably come to Atlanta and Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl.
Yeah, I guess Clemson's probably going to need Alabama to lose at some point then, or else they'll probably end up in Atlanta once again for the semifinal.
Well, they could, if Clemson's number 4, they could play Alabama in Atlanta then, if that was the case.
That's a good point. Absolutely, that could work out that way. Let me begin by asking, this is the Clemson's first trip to the Peach Bowl for the kickoff since they played Auburn in 2012. Just how did this all kind of unfold with this matchup?
Well, we started this format back in 2008 with Clemson and Alabama.
Yep.
And, obviously both schools, both administrations are first class and been great to work with, down through Terry Don Phillips to Dan Radakovich to, obviously now we'll work with Graham. And then with Tommy Bowden, as well as Dabo Sweeney. So very, very close to Clemson's program. Great first-class people all the way through it. And so we're looking forward to hosting them, in the game. But we had talked with Dan Radakovich about coming back to play. And obviously with the South Carolina game home and home, it's difficult with your conference games to find that opportunity, right?
Sure.
So it just didn't make sense until Dan Radakovich and Greg McGarity started talking about playing home and home with Clemson, Georgia. And I said, guys, what about playing one game here in Atlanta and then playing your home and home? And so they both like Atlanta. They both recruit, obviously, heavily in Georgia. Mercedes-Benz Stadium's a first-class fan experience. I think they like working with us in Peach Bowl Inc. And so we were able to put the deal together and made a lot of sense for both schools.
So you're talking about your Georgia Tech,
and
not
for 2024, when we were able to, schedule, Georgia Clemson, and
right.
They scheduled a home and home after that. For this game, it was working with the ACC and trying to find a way to help the ACC on their Monday night ESPN time slot. We said, hey, when it makes sense, we'd be glad to host the second game on Monday night. It's got to be teams that are close by that can buy the tickets. and still go to work the next day because, it's a Monday night 8 o'clock game.
Sure.
So we worked with the ACC. We worked with Georgia Tech. We worked with Mercedes-Benz because this is basically a Georgia Tech ACC home game.
Right.
Conference game, which we've never held a conference game in our Chick-Fil-A kickoff game format. So, and the ACC looked at the schedule, said, well, Clemson's going to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech said, hey, that'd be a great game to put in the kickoff game format. So give credit to Todd Stansberry and Michael Strickland in the ACC and Mercedes-Benz Stadium for working for us and with us to all four of us were able to agree and put this thing together.
Well, I have to ask you about closing the upper deck at the behest of Georgia Tech. Obviously, they did that for their...
It was a mutual decision. I mean,
okay.
Georgia Tech, we knew that Georgia Tech last year played North Carolina, and they played with the first two levels. And the Georgia Tech fans had a great experience. And again, that was an ACC conference game, so they could have played that at Bobby Dodd, but they decided to go Mercedes-Benz. So we knew that, and so when we talked to them and said, well, what do you want to do on the, we went back and forth on, the manifest. We both agreed, so it wasn't Georgia Tech's decision, it was our decision as well to play in the first two levels for this game and keep the manifest similar to the North Carolina game.
Okay. I guess for the Oregon, you're going to have the Oregon and Georgia matchup on Saturday in Mercedes-Benz. I'm assuming the upper deck will be open for that one.
Yeah, that'll seat the full manifest at 72,000.
Obviously, that means much more ticket sales for y'all. Would that be, some sort of any sort of a deterrent, I guess, in the future? Of I see you have Georgia Tech playing Louisville either next year or the year after in the kickoff, which would be a similar type of situation, ACC versus ACC, with Georgia Tech being the home team. But would you prefer to have an interconference game?
Well, in the case of an ACC game. By ACC, I guess, contract, the visiting team only gets 4,000 tickets. So, Georgia Tech only has to, or in our case, we only could provide Clemson with 4,000 tickets because that's the regulations of an ACC home game. So, we abided by that, and, we'll do the same next year with Louisville. And we'll talk with Georgia Tech and see what makes sense, whether we want to open it up or keep the same manifest at the first two levels.
What, just incidentally, what are y'all expecting to see with that Oregon-Georgia game? Or do you expect to see a lot of Ducks fans making the trip all the way across the coast?
Yeah, there'll probably be about 10,000 Oregon fans, I would think, in the stadium. So yeah, they'll. I know they have a big hospitality area right down in Home Depot backyard set up with a lot of people. I know they sold out their tickets in 3 days.
Wow.
So obviously they're excited. It's a team that's favored with Utah to win the Pac-12. So, they're excited to come play Georgia.
Gary, let me get your thoughts on playoff expansion. Obviously, now that the Peach Bowl is part of the New Year's Six Bowls and hosting the semifinals on a regular basis, I would imagine if the playoff were to expand to 8 or 12 teams, the Peach Bowl would host the semifinals, or not the semifinals rather, but would host the playoff every year. Would you then be in favor of expansion?
Well, obviously, we don't have a say-so or a vote.
Sure.
We just hope that in our case that we've done enough to impress the teams that have played in our games, the ADs, the administration, the CFP, that Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl would remain a part of the playoff, whatever it looks like, whether it's, to your point, whether it stays at 4 or moves to 8 or 12 or even goes to 16. We hope that we're a part of whatever the format is going forward.
So you don't have a particular preference or just personal
Not really.
opinion?
I think it's up to the commissioners and the the ADs and the conferences and ultimately the presidents as to what format they want to go to. We just, again, we enjoy hosting the first, the group of 5, the 2 top 10 teams we get in one year, and then the semifinal every 3 years. We'll host another semi in 2025, which will be, I guess, the end of the CFP contract if it goes to full length. And so we hope we are a part of the semifinals on a rotational basis moving forward, and either first or quarterfinals, depending on how many teams they expand to.
Gotcha. You mentioned the that Clemson Alabama game back in 2008. I was actually I'm a 2-time Clemson grad, so I was actually in the stands for that game. It was before I was in the media, and Alabama had its way with Clemson, and that was kind of I always look back on that game. Tommy Bowden was still the head coach. That was the year that Clemson fired Tommy Bowden and then named Dabo the interim coach in the middle of that season. And Clemson was a heavy favorite, as you probably recall, as a ranked team coming in, and Alabama was coming off, I think, a 7-6 season in Nick Saban's first year, the year before that. And I remember talking to all the Alabama fans. They were all expecting to get their butts whipped by Clemson, but it turned out to be the other way around. And I always kind of think of that game as a huge pivotal turning point. If you look at what Nick Saban has done since then, that was kind of the beginning of his dynasty as they went undefeated that regular season, and then obviously it was a huge turning point in the history of Clemson football as well. What do you remember looking back on that game, and is it crazy to think about for you just what Dabo and Nick Saban have been able to build at their respective schools?
Well, it's really interesting because we had made a bid in 2006 when the old BCS decided to add another bowl game to have a championship game, and we didn't win the bid. The next year, the NCAA legislated a 12th game to the schedules, and I created this kickoff game format saying we're going to create a BCS type bowl on the front side of the season. And Terry Don Phillips, who was a friend, loved the idea, and Clemson was going to come in top 10. I think they were number 9 then. And then I called Nick Saban, who was a friend from LSU days, and they had played in our 2000 Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl when he was at LSU. And Nick said, Gary, my second year of Alabama, if I can win the state of Alabama recruiting and we can play in Georgia and finish second to Georgia in recruiting in Georgia, we'll play for national championships.
Huh.
And so they came in, beat Clemson, as you mentioned, 34-10. They were on the cover Sports Illustrated. Alabama's back. They went on, as you said, to have a great season that year. The next year, they were ranked number 5. I had them back playing our Chick-fil-A kickoff game against Virginia Tech, who was number 7.
Right.
They beat Virginia Tech. They won the national championship that year in 2009 and had 19 players from Georgia on the roster.
Wow.
So, and if Nick Saban were on this call, he'd tell you that the Alabama run started against that Clemson game in our Chick-fil-A kickoff game. Now, on the other side, on Dabo, we've also been a part of Clemson's start of their run in 2013 when they wound up beating LSU, a high-ranked team, 13-12.
Yep.
And then the next year, they started the season by beating Georgia. So after the LSU win, the Clemsoning term fell out of the dictionary. They went on to beat Georgia the next year and start the season, and then Clemson's been on that run ever since. So we've been a part of both Clemson and Alabama's start of their run that they've been on in such a successful way the last, 10 years.
I will take some liberty and omit the term Clemsoning from my quotes from you.
That word doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. Well, Clemson fans don't even like to be reminded that it ever existed, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll bet.
But that's great stuff, Gary. As you mentioned, also Clemson, Georgia, another huge matchup to start the 2024 season there in Mercedes-Benz. And as we talked about, the Peach Bowl has had such a long history of ACC versus SEC, but obviously since the playoff era has begun, and you've been a part of the New Year's Six bowls, you don't have that option to make it a ACC versus SEC. Would you like then to kind of consider? As I mentioned, I know you have Georgia Tech Louisville matchup coming up either next year or the year after that, and then Clemson Georgia and a couple more ACC versus SEC. Would you like to continue that tradition of ACC versus SEC in the kickoff game?
Yeah, it's a great question. What we did is we had so much success prior to joining the CFB with, I think, 18 out of 19 years sellouts of ACC versus SEC, that when we moved into the CFP, knowing we weren't going to get those matchups, we basically took that strategy to move it forward in the kickoff game format. So, Clemson, Alabama, Virginia Tech, Alabama, we had Tennessee, Georgia Tech, we had, Auburn, Clemson. We had so many years where we just finished the ACC SEC, or took the ACC SEC concept and put it in our Chick-Fil-A kickoff games, because we have the number one or number two alumni base of all the ACC and SEC schools living in Metro Atlanta. So a lot of fans there. Number one, fans love coming to Atlanta from all the schools in the ACC and SEC. So we knew we could sell the tickets. Secondarily, it was easier to schedule ACC SEC because of their eight game conference schedule, whereas Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12, they all played 9 conference games.
Right.
And as an AD, you have to schedule 7 home games to make your budget. So in those years where they had 4 conference games at home and 5 away with a 9-game schedule, they had to take the rest of their 3 non-conference games and schedule at home. So they didn't have the inventory. Whereas the ACC, SEC always had inventory because they only played 8 conference games. So that's the second reason why we strategically went with ACC versus SEC. Now, having said that, we have reached out to, Auburn or Washington to play Auburn in 18, Oregon this year to play Georgia. So when there was a big-time opponent that wasn't ACC, SEC, we didn't hesitate bringing them to play in Atlanta as well.
Yeah, I've personally always been in favor of the ACC sticking to the eight game format as well as the SEC for that very reason. Because I think if they go to 9 games like the other conferences, we're never going to see those great matchups again. I mean, the Clemson against Georgia, Clemson against Auburn. I mean, because obviously you got the game against South Carolina, the rivalry game every year, and no one's going to make their schedule that difficult. Where they only have 2 or 1 rather, so to speak, cupcake game against a FCS opponent. So I hope it remains that way so we continue to get these matchups. Gary, you've had a lot of success with your philanthropic Peach Bowl Challenge golf tournament. Over the years, and I know Dabo's been a regular. I don't think Dabo played last April, but he's been a regular in that over the years. What kind of golfer is Dabo?
Dabo's a very competitive golfer. He's passionate about it. Obviously, he, like a lot of the coaches, doesn't get a chance to play it as much as he'd like. But Dabo's always a lot of fun. He and Kathleen are great people, and just to have the coaches after spring ball, we give them a little respite to be able to come down to the Ritz at Reynolds on Lake Oconee and really share some quality time with not only each other but with other coaches and wives who live a similar life. Not many people have the life they live where they're always got to be on.
Right.
They've always got to be, doing something. So to give them, 2 or 3 days where they can just relax. I think it's very rewarding to them, number one. Number 2, to share some thoughts with other coaches, I think is helpful. And number three, to give something back to each of their foundations and charities by raising money by playing golf, I think is rewarding to them. I know it is to us, as we are the most charitable bowl organization in the country out of all 44 bowls. It's part of our mission. We've given $64.5 million back to communities and charities since 2002, and that's something that we humbly are proud of.
Well, I know how competitive firsthand Dabo is on the golf course, because we used to have a media golf tournament every July, and Dabo would play in it with us, and all the assistant coaches and some former players, and so I've seen he can swing the clubs pretty well. He discontinued that in favor of a media Olympics type deal the last few years, but maybe he'll be back at your event next April.
Yeah, he missed it last year because this was, I think, one son was graduating, one was getting married. So this was the only time he could get away. As I say, their schedule's so packed. The only time he could get away and have a boys' trip. And I think they went to see like the Red Sox, the Cubs.
Sounds right.
And Wrigley, and just to have the guys together. So we fully understand that, and I agree with you. I think he'll be back this year to play in the Peach Bowl Challenge.
Well, Gary, now for the most important question, for the fan day activities on game day there in Atlanta. What have you got in store for the Clemson and Georgia Tech faithful?
Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend. We're going to start off with our National Down Syndrome Consortium dinner, where President Clements will attend. We're going to give 4 honorees that are part of the National Down Syndrome Consortium. And then we're going to recognize the 4 schools, Clemson, Georgia, Oregon, and Georgia Tech, because they all have great programs for disability education. So that's Thursday night. Friday, we'll host the VIP reception with ESPN, the governor, the presidents, the ADs, etc. from Georgia and Oregon. Then on Saturday, we'll have our kickoff tailgate presented by PNC out at International Plaza with all kind of games, activities, sponsor activations, food, music, beverages, and TVs to watch games on prior to our 3:30 kick. And then, so that'll be 4 hours before the game. And then 2 hours before the game, we'll actually have Georgia and Oregon pull up their buses and actually walk through their fans, led by their cheerleaders and their mascots, into Mercedes-Benz Stadium doing their team walk. We'll kick off at 3:30. Then on Sunday, we'll celebrate kickoff Football Fest, where we'll close Marietta Street next to Centennial Olympic Park and next to the College Football Hall of Fame. Have the Hall of Fame open for access. We'll have Hall of Famers in there making appearances. We'll have all kinds of sponsor activations and food and everything, music. And then on Monday, 4 hours before the game, again, our tailgate presented by PNC will be in International Plaza. 2 hours before, Clemson and Georgia Tech will pull up and actually walk through their crowds again, led by their mascots and cheerleaders. And then we'll kick off at 8 o'clock as the dessert for Labor Day weekend and the kickoff of college football. After people celebrate their reunions or their picnics or whatever they do on Labor Day, you get the dessert of Georgia Tech Clemson.
Wow. Well,
like kickoff game.
Atlanta's certainly going to be the place to be next weekend. That sounds extremely exciting. I saw that the Sea Lion picked the Yellow Jackets to win the game, so I was thinking about actually skipping the whole trip, but now I think I'm absolutely going to have to be there in Atlanta.
Our aquarium's a good partner. They're the biggest in the world, and it's a great aquarium, and so we have some fun with this stuff as well. So, we look forward to hosting all the Clemson fans down in Atlanta. And I know there's tickets probably on secondary market for the Clemson people to
yes, sir.
To access. And as you know, Clemson people will find a way to get in that stadium on Monday night.
They sure will. Lastly, before I let you go, Gary, on a personal level, I know you're an NC State grad. Just what do you think about this whole resurgence of the Wolfpack beating the Tigers in that big double overtime thrilling game last year? And obviously we've all got that October 8th game in Death Valley circled this season. The Textile Bowl is alive and well.
No, that's a great way of putting it. And I definitely have that weekend scheduled to come up there to Clemson to see the NC State Clemson game.
Great.
I think obviously those two would be favorite now that Wake Forest has lost Hartman for a couple of 2-3 weeks, although I think they'll still be competitive and maybe win those games while he's out.
Yeah.
So those three teams I think are probably the favorites going in, with Clemson being by far the biggest favorite. I think NC State, Dave Dorn's done a heck of a job. The kids on defense getting hurt early last year, coming back to play, I think will really support the defense. And both Clemson and NC State defense will be fantastic this year. I think Devin Leary at quarterback gives NC State a chance.
Yeah.
Obviously, they got to fill the running back positions. Their wide receivers, although they lost Kesey, they're still pretty solid at wide receivers. They lost the great first-round draft pick at tackle. They've got to replace that. So, they've got a little bit of holes to fill, but I think Dave's done a good enough job recruiting. And with the transfer portal, they'll be very competitive against Clemson on that weekend up there in Death Valley.
Yeah, well, Leary's fantastic. He's a baller for sure. And so no matter what, holes they may have, I think he'll definitely have them in position to win every game. And so that's looking like it's going to be a huge top 10 matchup in the ACC. Maybe a premier game nationally that weekend. But I was looking back at the Peach Bowl history. I couldn't believe that, under your watch, NC State has not been in a Peach Bowl, have they?
They have not. The only time I got NC State to play is in 2017, I think, against Tennessee in our Chick-Fil-A kickoff game, or somewhere around there.
Okay, they were in the kickoff.
Yeah, they were in our kickoff game once, and I've never had them. And ironically enough, to your point, the second most appearances by a team in the old Peach Bowl and the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl has been NC State.
Is that right?
I think they've been in 7 times.
Huh.
And Clemson's been in 8, I think. And yet, in 25 years, I've yet to see NC State in our Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl.
Well, a lot of people have them as a dark horse to make the playoffs, so this could be the year.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, and as I said, that Clemson game is going to be telltale for both teams as to who wins that ACC, I think, this year.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks again for taking the time, Gary. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in Atlanta next week.
Well, great to visit with you, and look forward to hosting you when you come down.
All right, have a great weekend, Gary.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.